Waking up is a nightmare. Unfamiliar ceiling, strange room, aching body like I went 10 rounds in a street fight. My mind is a blur. Last thing I recall, a few drinks at the welcome party. At 20, I've had my share of drama. But this, seeing Muhin's back, I pray it's just a fever dream. Why am I here, trapped alone with him? We've been neighbors forever, but this feels wrong. He's Merjan's older brother, a guy who knew my late sister. And Muhin? He's always been sharp, sly, and honestly, a bit of a nightmare to deal with. My sister used to lecture him constantly. 10 years my senior, he spent my entire childhood teasing and mocking me. I spent my teens running from him. So how on earth did things spiral into me, waking up in his bed? Maybe I'm still sleeping. I close my eyes, trying to drift off, but Muhin's voice cuts through. He's awake. He mentions talking to Merjan. Dinner at their parents' house. I look over and my heart drops. Muhin is holding my phone, and it's blowing up with missed calls from Merjan. I scramble up, furious. How could he just grab my stuff? Waking up in an alley would have been less humiliating than this. Even a stranger's apartment would be better. But my friend's older brother, the guy who's tormented me for years, it's a total disaster. It keeps getting worse. He asks if I remember anything. And the worst part? Muhin is the one I've been secretly head over heels for. It's been 3 months since my 20th birthday. Yeah, exactly 3 months of pining later. The legend goes that someone set the mountain on fire, stealing the victim away. The heavens demand blood, a phantom curse for that heinous sin. The So family was marked, generations haunted by restless spirits because they dared to burn the natural world. Heaven turned its back on the daughters of the So line. Their family tree withered. If the curse grew too strong, she was meant to sacrifice herself to keep the phantoms at bay. Her only comfort was a promise from her best friend, Lady Kim. Blessed with sight, Lady Kim built an identical decoy house across the street, using her own power to ward off the evil spirits. She guarded her friend until her final breath. And that legacy, that protective will, it was passed down through the generations. To this day, our families are practically attached at the hip. I've lived across the street from them for 20 years, and if I've learned one thing, it's that some truths are better left buried. Ignorance really is bliss. But what did I do? What happened last night? My back is killing me. Maybe I don't want to know. I tell him I'm leaving, but Muhin insists we have breakfast first. He promises to buy me something good, acting like I'm a starving kid. But some things, you just can't keep hidden forever. He drives me home. I thank him for the ride and the meal, desperate to just get out of his car and disappear. As we part, he warns me not to drink too much tonight. Wait, how does he know my plans? He says I mentioned it yesterday. I feel like a total idiot. I promise I don't drink like that often. I ramble on, trying to play it cool, but I'm spiraling. I can't stop myself. My hand touches the doorknob, and a weird, cold feeling crawls up my spine. The yard looks exactly as I left it. I shake it off. Must be my imagination playing tricks on me. Merjan seems calm, so Muhin must have warned their parents already. They're usually prone to panicking, with or without a reason. Muhin knows that he probably smoothed everything over. Still, how did he answer my phone? See, the So family is cursed. Most of us don't make it past 20, the spirits usually come to collect. But I was born on an auspicious day, the lucky break that kept me safe from that tragic fate. My parents and neighbors have been walking on eggshells for years. I thought for sure they'd have filed a missing person report by now. Merjan scolds me for blacking out, says I clearly can't handle my liquor and need to learn my limits. I tell him it's not a daily habit. He asks if I'm coming over later. I tell him I have plans with my classmates, so I'll be back late. He mentions their dog, Pixulji, is always waiting for me. I ask how his brother knew to pick me up. I don't know, and Mergen just wonders why I didn't ask. Why would I ask? Everything's fine, right? I really don't want to dig into the details of last night. I cut him off and hang up. Thank God Mergen is oblivious. I wave to the housekeeper, praying that if I don't bring up last night, Muhin won't either. I'm taking this secret to my grave. At the meetup, my mind is still back in that bedroom. A friend asks why I'm acting so gloomy, but I lie and say I'm fine. He doesn't buy it, pointing out that I've been sighing like a broken man all night. He pushes me to open up, saying he can't help if I stay silent. I'm stuck remembering waking up in his older brother's bed and the hazy memory of crying my eyes out. I admitted I drank way too much and hit a total blackout. My friend asks if I made it home safe and what the hell went wrong. I tell him I made a fool of myself. He's dying to hear the story. But how do I explain embarrassing myself in front of an old acquaintance I can't even remember facing? He told himself it wasn't entirely his fault. Really, both were to blame here. Muhin saw him drunk, yet things escalated. John arrived, apologizing, then asked why Senju looked half dead. Senju groaned about blacking out and making a fool of himself, so Yeon chimed in, if there is a time to mess up, it's now, at 20. Just eat some meat and relax, she said. Senju didn't agree. If only it were a one-time thing. But since New Year's, when he turned 20, he'd had that first drunken kiss. It wasn't some childish joke. It was raw, genuine feeling. And now, it had happened again. Friends invited him for more, but Senju told them to drink alone. John hopped in a cab, waving until Monday. They told her to get home safe. A friend pushed for a third round, but Senju just wanted to go home. He shoved his friend into a car, warned him to keep his head inside, and told the driver to go. His friend offered to wait for a call if he changed his mind. Senju sighed, wondering what kind of day this was. He even had to tell his family he was just out walking. The street was dark, almost eerie enough for a ghost to appear, though he knew better than to expect that. He had zero spiritual power. Then he saw her, a girl with long black hair, barefoot, standing there in white. A shiver went down his spine. He told himself he was just sleep-deprived. His mind was playing games. He just wanted to get to bed. The girl kept pace with him, then suddenly darted into the path of an oncoming bus. Senju lunged forward to save her. Staring at the headlights rushing toward him, he wondered if this was the end. Suddenly, a hand yanked him back. Muhin held him tight, muttering that he finally understood why he had such a bad feeling. Senju managed a shaky smile. Between the unfamiliar arms and his own body trembling, he was a mess. The girl remained in the road. Next day, he headed to campus. He realized he'd been caught in a spirit's influence. He tried to shake off yesterday, but ghosts aren't easily forgot. He'd always assumed he'd live a normal life, but maybe his family's bloodline was finally catching up to him. He touched the talisman Muhin gave him. Ever since that night, he'd felt a strange energy, and he knew he was in deep trouble. Sohyan appeared, asking why he looked so haunted. Senju jumped, startled. Sohyan said he'd startled her too, and asked if he was in trouble again. Senju told her not to be ridiculous, just tired. She asked if he made it home fine on Saturday. That Saturday, Muhin suggested Senju might have developed spiritual vision. Being able to see the unseen is a rare, terrifying gift for an ordinary person. It was insane that it chose him. If you're born on an unlucky day, but lack the spiritual energy, you shouldn't see anything. That's what he always believed. Muhin explained it happened because his own spiritual energy had transferred to Senju. Muhin promised he was fine, though Senju felt anything but. Those quiet whispers from Muhin kept him anchored, not because they were calming, but because that low, sultry voice held a suggestive edge he couldn't help but feel. Muhin told him it was temporary and would fade in half a day. But, he added, in Senju's specific case, it might take longer. He'd take full responsibility. Senju blinked, asking exactly what kind of responsibility. Muhin said if he couldn't get his energy back, he'd have to protect him until the vision faded. He didn't want him getting hurt again. Muhin moved toward the spirit, and Senju asked what he was planning. He saw talismans glowing in Muhin's grip, wondering if this was an exorcism. The symbols flared with light. Senju was stunned. He'd never seen such a thing. Muhin told him to close his eyes and count to 100. Did he still see him as a child? In the heavy, suffocating silence, his senses went into overdrive. Despite the bossy tone, Senju kept his eyes shut tight, knowing it was for the best. To be honest, he didn't want to see what was happening. He heard a sound like heavy gates creaking open. Where would gates come from on a city street? Two spirits appeared, and Muhin greeted them like old friends. It felt like a surreal fever dream. He just wanted it to end, feeling deeply unsettled by the whole thing. The air turned ice cold. The spirits and the girl vanished into the mist. Muhin asked if he'd been scared. Senju looked around. Nothing. No girl, no gates, just empty space. Senju told him he was fine. Muhin told him to get in, saying he'd give him a ride. Senju asked about that promise to take responsibility. What if another spirit showed up? What if they needed another ritual? Meeting a ghost had not been on his bucket list. Muhin told him spirits weren't that rare. And then he asked if he was scared. Senju dismissed it as just tiring and drawn out. Muhin told him not to worry so much and promised to stay out of sight. I marveled at how confident Muhin seemed. I recalled how Muhin, thanks to his own gift, suffered from constant insomnia as a child. Yet even among our kin, Muhin was different. Muhin then revealed he was an exorcist, a professional ghost hunter, actually. By 20, he'd already joined the official Exorcist Association. He'd been hunting spirits for a decade now. He asked if I knew that spirits are naturally drawn to spiritual energy. He explained that malicious ones can latch on to the living or lash out when they go mad. Even restless souls keep fragments of their memories, and an exorcist's energy keeps them at bay. That's why he insisted on staying by my side, so no spirit would dare get near me. I asked if that meant I was finally safe from them. He sounded pretty sure. I realized he was hedging his bets. He never guarantees anything unless it's a total certainty, which meant I might still run into one. He reassured me, promising I'd be fine and to stop stressing. Everyone's been overprotective of me since I was a kid. I'm used to it, but man, it gets annoying sometimes. I wondered if he was doing this out of duty, some family vow, or just plain guilt. Then, out of nowhere, he kissed me. I snapped at him for such disgusting behavior. He just called me rude. Then he randomly asked if I'd learned to use a lighter. I had no clue why he'd ask that. He said he hoped things would stay like this. Was he messing with me again? He told me to head home and that he'd pick me up Monday. After he left, I finally figured out what had been bothering me. When the gates opened, it was that talisman suppressing the spiritual energy. The chill I felt was Muhin energy. It hit me just how much I'd been caught up in without even knowing it. Things I never should have discovered. My friends asked if I was really skipping drinks and suggested dinner instead. I told them no. They offered to treat me no cost. I still turned them down. I asked them to just go ahead since I was expecting someone. They pushed for shellfish, claiming they knew the perfect spot. They weren't even listening. Why were even the non-drinkers so hyped? I told my friend to stop leaning on me. He reeked of smoke. He just hugged me and told me to get over it. With Muhin arriving any minute, I had no idea how to ditch them. Then I heard some girls whispering about a handsome guy. Could it be him? But he said he'd wait at the main gate. There had to be other good-looking guys around, right? I prayed it wasn't him. I've always drawn attention not because of how I look, but because of this weird vibe I seem to give off. How was I supposed to approach Muhin with everyone watching? If I could, I'd just run away. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was the fact that seeing us together always caused a scene, for me, and for Merjan and Mujan too. The three of us being neighbors and looking like this had completely messed up my normal life. Every time I thought about it, I wanted to stay as far away from them as possible. Maybe I should just ghost them. My friend complained about how slow I was moving, threatening to head to the restaurant and order without me. Suddenly, Muhin and I locked eyes. We exchanged nods. My friend asked if we knew each other, or if this was the guy I'd embarrassed myself in front of last time. I told him we were just acquaintances. I told my friend to shut up. Muhin just laughed as we bickered. This was a total disaster. I said goodbye to my friends and walked toward him. He asked if I wasn't going out with them. I told him not to wait by the school anymore and that I'd just call him instead. I explained. It was because I didn't want to waste his precious time. I assumed he wouldn't bother waiting if he knew I was hanging out. He insisted he'd always make time to pick me up, but I told him to spend that time walking Pexogly instead. He said regardless, he wouldn't stop waiting at the gate. I told him I didn't need attention from a guy so busy he only visits his parents 3 times a year. Suddenly, he asked if I really just considered him an acquaintance. I asked him what else I was supposed to call him. He suggested close neighbor Heon. Was that not accurate? I thought that was completely wrong. I don't even live next door anymore. I told him we aren't that close. He said that was a pity to hear. Considering he used to change my diapers, I asked why he'd bring up something I couldn't even remember. He stepped closer and asked if I still thought of him as just an acquaintance. After that, I really wished we were just strangers. What really ticked me off was how I kept reacting to his words, even knowing he was joking. He asked if the smoker was my best friend, noting he smelled like cigarettes. How could he smell smoke from across the street? Is he even human? He told me not to look so shocked and asked if I was friends with all those people. I said they were just classmates. He joked that ever since they'd sent me off to university, all these girls chasing him. Senju snapped, telling him to stop acting like his father. He stormed off. Muhin just told him to slow down. They were supposed to walk together, right? Senju thought if only Muhin would stop talking nonsense. Muhin teased. Were they walking alone? Senju wondered. How much longer? Once my spiritual vision fades, I won't get to walk beside Muhin anymore. He'll be hunting spirits, and I'll be back to my boring life. Loving someone who doesn't love you back, that is true loneliness. I got used to the distance and gave up. But today, the scenery feels off. This oppressive, heavy feeling, a sweet scent. Is it coming from the forest? Suddenly, it hits me, and I just want to run toward it. My mind is slipping. I have to follow it inside. Muhin calls my name, but I can't even remember who I am. Muhin asks what's wrong, seeing me freeze up. I wonder what just happened, while Muhin checks if I'm in pain. I tell him I'm fine, just caught a weird scent. For a second, I totally lost control. Probably just my imagination, right? If anything were actually wrong, Muhin would have sensed it first. I brush it off. I tell him it was nothing. Let's just keep moving. I'm just tired. Need a nap. Muhin asks if I'm embarrassed to be seen with him. I explain. Everyone keeps begging me to introduce them to him. Muhin shrugs. Why not? I ask. Are you joking? We're only 20, Muhin replies. Yeah, maybe 20 is a bit too young for that. He asks if I want cake. We keep walking. As we near the mountain trail, that heavy feeling returns. I'm scared. I've carried this talisman for 2 years, but I've never needed it this badly. That sweet aroma, it's getting stronger near the trail. I cannot let it fool me again. If I do, it's real trouble. And if Muhin starts worrying, he might hang around my lecture hall instead of the gate, and my friends would never let me hear the end of it. I think back to him saying 20 is too young. Wait, where am I? Why am I walking, and for what? Suddenly, I see a strange boar in the woods. First time ever. I can feel that curse I've been running from closing in. This time, I might actually die. Muhin appears, talisman in hand. He calls me clever, says he's here. Everything is fine, he says. Just close your eyes and count to 100. Spirits are nature itself, the source of all life. A soul without a vessel, lost and unhealed, gathers anger and negativity until it eventually harms others. These lost souls stay too long, losing their minds, their thoughts, and even their memories. Once reason is gone, they become malevolent spirits. Spirit energy only makes that worse. But there are those who can save them. People who shield the living from the other world are called exorcists. Their job is to wipe out these evil spirits. Some exorcists track them, others seal them. Muhin is a sealer. He carried an unconscious me home, telling me to just trust him. I found his voice so steady, I almost agreed. I asked him if he meant I'd run into another spirit. Muhin said it was possible. I reminded him he already sealed it. Muhin corrected me he only sealed the boar. I wondered if that was it, worrying there were more nearby. I hope not. Muhin said I looked confused. He wasn't sure, but let's use an analogy. I'm like a scentless flower, yet so valuable everyone wants a piece. If I'm the flower, spirits are the bees, Muhin explained. When his spiritual energy touched me, it brought a scent that wasn't there before. And the bees, naturally, they'd flock to the flower. So a whole swarm could gather around me. Why me? There have to be other flowers out there. If we had the answer, maybe my brother and sister would still be alive. Muhin compared spirits to Venus flytraps that lure prey with fragrance. Very few exorcists can track that energy. In his family, only he and his mother could, which is why they were the hunters. He thought it was amazing I could sense it from so far away even before he did. Muhin said yin energy usually takes 3 days to strengthen, about the time the association takes to track spirits. That gave me a lot to process. He asked how I sensed it earlier. He touched my hand, asking, "Do you feel anything?" My hands felt unnaturally cold, like touching a cursed charm. Muhin checked, saying my temperature was perfectly normal. He suspected I was an empty vessel. Most people are born with innate chi, but my soul was born completely void. This forced me to instinctively crave external energy, making me hypersensitive to spirits. I thought back to all my time with Mirjan, but nothing like this had ever happened before. Muhin found it odd, then brought up that night I got drunk. I told him to drop it. He reasoned that I had never absorbed this much energy before. Now that my spiritual vision had finally been ripped open, my senses were sharper than ever. I realized I had been craving this energy, unconsciously burying that hunger deep down. I asked him what I was supposed to do. Muhin told me not to worry. Once the spiritual vision faded away, everything would return to normal. Until then, I had to stay close to him. He made me promise to tell him immediately if anything felt off, even if it seemed minor or just a trick of my imagination. He was trying to scare me, wasn't he? When I first caught that faint scent, I hadn't thought it was a big deal at all. It was tough, and I hated being a burden over little things. But when things escalated, it just caused more drama. I knew I should speak up early, even if reality rarely goes to plan. I told him I understood. I decided then and there that booze was the root of all my misery time to get sober. He offered me some clothes, but I just wanted to go home. He pushed back, asking why I couldn't just stay. The bed was big enough, he said. I countered that I don't sleep well away from home. He reminded me I didn't have any trouble last time. Here he goes again. I just wished he'd drop the subject. I told him I had university classes to deal with tomorrow. Suddenly, he leaned in from behind, asking if I wanted to skip classes for a few days. I said I wasn't ruining my attendance. He asked if it was true you only fail after 4 absences. I snapped back that skipping 3 straight days was still pushing it. He admitted he didn't know much about school life. Then, he said his car was waiting and offered me a lift. As we climbed in, I couldn't help but ask how I even got to his place in the first place. He carried me on his back. I asked if he walked the whole way. He said yes, and asked if that was a problem. I said no, but I was shocked he'd hauled me that far. I asked if it was heavy. He said it wasn't. Like when we were kids, he told me to just rest if I was worn out. It was already pitch black outside. If exorcists were on duty all night, when did he actually sleep? Considering he was hauling me around every morning and evening, I asked about his job. He said he'd drop me off and head to the association. I asked how long until the spiritual energy wore off. He guessed about a week. I crunched the numbers. It was Tuesday, so missing 3 days wouldn't tank my grades. I decided to stay home until the weekend. I thought about how on my short class days, he probably never even got a decent night's sleep. He suggested I stay at his place. I asked if my own house wasn't safe enough. He said safety-wise, his home was the best in the country. Even other exorcists find it untouchable. He wanted to keep a close eye on me. Even with work tonight, he thought it was best if I stayed with him until the energy was gone. I thanked him, but insisted I was doing just fine, and I didn't want to worry my parents. He said they were fine with it as long as I was with him. He'd even called them, telling them I passed out after drinking. I wondered if he could have used a better lie. He said if I was hiding out of fear, that was fine, but if it was just to spare him, I shouldn't sacrifice my grades. He insisted a few sleepless nights wouldn't kill him, so I shouldn't stress. He was way too sharp. He stepped out of the car, asking for my decision. He always does whatever he wants. He's just so impossibly persistent. I figured since he insisted he could handle it, there was no point in fighting him anymore. Outside, I thanked him for the help and the ride. He told me to take care and said he'd see me tomorrow. It felt weird hearing him talk like that. Usually, he'd just say something cold like, "Get inside." For some reason, this simple goodbye hit me hard. Just hearing him say it differently made my chest ache. The next few days were a blur, just passing by without anything crazy happening. Every morning, he drove me to campus. I buried myself in my books, but felt a flicker of annoyance when he'd wait for me at the gates after class. Yet, those same days, walking side by side under the spring sun, became memories I would cherish forever. Monday came, and I felt nothing, no chill, no pressure from the outside world. The energy was gone. I wondered if I should tell him not to come anymore. I decided to see him one last time, just to be sure, and take the chance to thank him for everything. He wished me a good weekend before fading out of my life again. No more goodbyes hinting at the next time. Time to get back to real life, so why am I feeling so disappointed? The professor wraps up class, and my friend starts whining about being hungry. Monday mornings are the worst. He suggests we hit the cafeteria to save some cash. Another guy chimes in, telling him to quit smoking. But then, Byam Jin from business admin walks up and asks for my number. The whole room starts buzzing. I ask why he's being so weird. Why not just ask Muhin for my digits? Byam Jin says he tried, but Muhin was out cold. He wonders why Muhin was still sleeping. Byam Jin's an old classmate, and like his neighbors, he's training to be an exorcist. But he always talks to Muhin more than me. We're at the same school, yet we barely speak. I give him my number, asking why he even wants it. He asks when my classes end. I say 3. He tells me his finish at 4, then asks me to wait for him so he can walk me home. I'm confused. Since when were we friends? Our houses are in totally opposite directions. Why go through all this trouble? Byam Jin admits Muhin ordered him to do it. He said to wait, make sure I didn't leave alone, and that he'd reach out later. My friend is stunned. I even know the guy. I mention we went to school together. He asks if that makes us friends. I counter. Does it look like we're friends? He keeps pressing me on why Byam Jin is acting like this. How do I explain this? If I start rambling about spiritual energy, they'll think I've lost my mind. Sojun asks if this is the Hyoen guy with the neck tattoo. I tell them to drop it, that it's all a misunderstanding. Stop overthinking it and eat. Honestly, I'm the one who should be grilling Muhin. He didn't even show up himself, just sent a babysitter. No warning? I'm going to have words with Byam Jin. I'm annoyed, but I'll get some answers. Then I realize I didn't even get his number. He couldn't send a text. We're supposed to meet, and he waits until the very last second? Did he forget? I'm waiting in the freezing cold, thinking of how much faster I could be home. Why wait an hour just to walk for 30 minutes? I could take the bus and be home in 10 minutes flat. Without my vision, do I really need this? I could call Muhin, but what would I even say? Why didn't you come get me yourself? Why the radio silence? Did he decide not to come because my spiritual vision is gone? If it's his fault, shouldn't he take responsibility? It wouldn't kill him to call. I can't let these insecure thoughts show. I'm not a kid. I'll just wait for Byam Jin. He's probably hanging out in the business building. I get the feeling someone is watching me. I'm shivering, wishing I was somewhere warm. Suddenly, some stranger walks up and asks if I'm Senju. Who is this guy? Why am I suddenly so popular? He doesn't look like a scammer, but how does he know my name? He asks for my number. Is this guy an idiot? What is with today? Did this guy see Byam Jin and decide to copy his act? I demand to know what he wants. He just wants to be friends. He holds out his phone again. This guy is a total lunatic. I start walking away, but he chases me, demanding I give him my number. I never agreed to that. He asks why not. I'm starting to lose my temper. I ask if he's for real. I don't know him, so why would I give my number to a complete stranger? How does he know my name? He goes quiet. And honestly, his expression looks wrong, barely human. I'm done. I just want him to vanish. He begs me to stop, but I get that familiar, creepy chill. Is he a spirit? My powers are gone, but I still grab my talisman. Spirits shouldn't just be hanging around campus. He notices my panic and asks what's wrong. His face is so lifeless, it's unsettling. Should I call Muhin? My phone rings, and I snatch it up. It's Jin, asking where I am. I tell him I'm by the Humanities building. I've never been so happy to hear his voice. He's an exorcist too. Maybe he can fix this. I tell him there's a spirit right here. The second I say it, the spirit just vanishes. Jin walks up, looking at my terrified face, and asks if I'm all right. I tell him I just saw a spirit. He asks if I'm feeling sick. Senju laughs it off, telling him he must be seeing things. Fanjan leans in, curious if he's ever dealt with spirits before. I weigh my options. Do I tell him about my spiritual sight? No. I just brush it off, telling him to forget I ever mentioned it. If I explain, he'll figure out how I'm tapping into this energy. I change the subject, teasingly reminding him that if he takes a number, he should text back. Fanjan plays dumb, asking how else he'd reach out. Then he circles back to that spirit comment, his eyes searching mine for an answer. I snap back, asking why he's so hooked on that now. I explain how this guy approached me earlier, looking completely hollow and lifeless. I tried to ditch him, but he just vanished into thin air while I was mid-call. Fanjan looks at me, asking if I actually gave him my digits. I retort, asking if he really thinks I'm that reckless. Fanjan stays eerily calm, noting that spirits don't show up now. And even if they did, I shouldn't be able to see them. His steady voice is almost hypnotic. I find myself wanting to trust him. I just pray I never run into that stranger again. As he walks me home, I press him for the truth. What exactly did Muhin ask of him? Fanjan explains he was just tasked with getting me home safe. He mentions Muhin wanted to send Merjan, but since he was out cold, Fanjan stepped up to the plate. That explains why he asked if I felt sick earlier. I realize Muhin didn't say a word about any of this. Classic him, staying tight-lipped. But wait, why ask Fanjan? Why couldn't Muhin just come himself? Suddenly, Fanjan drops a bombshell. He asks if I didn't know Muhin got hurt on his last job. My heart drops. Hunting is dangerous, but Muhin never makes mistakes. Fanjan says that's why he couldn't make it. He sent backup instead. I'm starting to panic, asking if it's really that bad. He shrugs, saying he doesn't have the full story, just that Muhin took a nasty fall from a cliff, though Merjan claims he's fine. Fine after a cliff fall. Do exorcists have a different dictionary? No word all morning, and now this? Fanjan suggests calling him if I'm so worried. Logically, if it were serious, Merjan wouldn't be sleeping, and I'd know. Still, I need to see him with my own eyes. I'm standing outside his house now, nerves shot. I made it here, but getting inside is a whole different mission. The security is insane. I've been here before, but for the life of me, I have no idea how I actually got in that first time. I can't just walk away now. I'll ring him once. If he doesn't answer, I'll call it a night. Maybe he's sleeping off the pain. I'm about to hang up after a few rings, and then he picks up. His voice sounds exhausted, so different from usual, but the second he realizes it's me, his tone shifts, warming up instantly. I tell him I'm right outside his door. Standing here, I'm tempted to just bolt before he opens it. I hope that even if his injuries are bad, I'll be able to keep my cool. As the door swings open, I blurt out an apology for the unannounced visit. He brushes it off, asking if I'm alone. I think back to Fanjan. Maybe he's annoyed I didn't bring protection. I tell him my spiritual vision is gone. He studies my eyes, confirming it's true. It means that guy earlier was human, not that it's any less creepy. He tells me to come inside, reaching out to take my hand. He's being so impulsive tonight. I hadn't planned on staying long, but the warmth of his hand is grounding. His hands were cold before, so maybe the energy really is gone. I notice the bandage on his arm. He asks if Fanjon spilled the beans, and from his expression, he definitely wanted to keep this secret. I ask if it's serious. He says it's just a dislocated shoulder, telling me not to sweat it. He says he popped it back in, and the bandage is just for show. I know exorcists heal fast a week, and he'll be brand new. No wonder everyone acts like it's nothing. He asks if I was worried, his fingers gently tracing my cheek. I admit it, I was worried sick. He looks so sleepy and soft right now, like he'd say yes to anything I asked. I feel like he's setting a trap, so I decide it's time to go. I tell him to rest up since he's clearly okay. He grabs my hand, refusing to let me leave. He begs me to stay for dinner. I say I'm not hungry, but he won't take no for an answer. He starts prepping a meal. I sigh, deciding I'll just eat and make a quick exit. He jokes about having ice cream for later. I ask how he even has that since he hates sweets. He says he bought it for me. He's acting like a kid, and he really just needs to go to sleep. He calls me to the table. I keep telling myself, eat, then run. Looking at the spread, I can't help but say he's a great cook. He smiles, saying he's been living solo for 10 years now. Dinner's over and it's pushing 9. I tell him it's time for me to get going. Muhin asks what's on the agenda after dinner, teasing that there's ice cream waiting. Senju is baffled. He knows Muhin doesn't even like sweets. Muhin just smiles, saying he picked it up specifically for him. I think to myself, he's acting like such a kid sometimes. I tell him to just hit the hay already, but he calls me to the table. Fine, I'll eat and get out of here. The food looks incredible. I can't help but admit he's a surprisingly good cook. Muhin beams at the praise. He mentions 10 years of living alone will do that to a guy. Dinner wraps up, and it's already nearing 9. Time to go. Muhin insists on walking him home, but Senju brushes it off. He lives nearby. Muhin stands firm. It's late and far too dangerous. He adds that walking alone is a bad idea. Senju retorts that he made it to university just fine this morning. Suddenly, Muhin turns apologetic. He offers 2 choices: stay the night or get an escort. He hands Senju his coat, teasing where he thinks he's going without it. Outside, Senju asks if Muhin is always this beat up. Muhin shrugs. If he didn't get hurt, he wouldn't be much of an exorcist, would he? He blames it on exhaustion and talisman overuse. Senju probes, wondering just how many days he's been grinding away at this. Friday, Muhin admits 3 days total. He's hunting a spirit before it gets stronger, but no matter how hard he searches, it stays hidden. Senju tells him to sleep, but that knowing smile tells him Muhin is still on the clock tonight. I wonder what an exhausted man with a mangled arm plans to do. My head is spinning. I've been uneasy all day. First, that injury, and now he's walking me home. I tell him last time. I sense something he missed. Maybe I can lure the spirit out? Muhin asks if I'm really offering to be bait. I clarify that isn't exactly it, but honestly, it doesn't even matter anymore. I'd never usually suggest such a thing, but he looks so worn out. I just want him to finish this job quickly so he can finally get some rest. I try to ask something else, but Muhin leans in and kisses me. This feels different than the new year. I've never been kissed like this before. Even waking up in his bed, I never imagined he'd actually try something like this. A strange flutter hits my stomach, and I shiver from the cold. Muhin thanks me, but warns that if I want to help, I'll have to keep doing this every day. I wonder, did we kiss like this the last time I blacked out? Muhin tells me to look at myself. What good would that actually do? He tells me to head home and see you tomorrow. I think, Will I even be able to sleep after this? That night, I dream. I'm back in that familiar apartment. He's right there with me. I try to speak, but the words vanish. Muhin asks why I'm addressing him like that in my head. He wants me to call him Hyun. I ask why he's pretending he doesn't remember what just happened between us. He claims it wasn't a kiss. I'm stunned. It was clearly, unmistakably a kiss. Why lie? I laugh, asking what else it could be. He says he couldn't do that with their Senju. I dare him, am I sure? And kiss him back. I jolt awake, heart racing. What does this dream mean? Why were we acting like that? Ignorance was bliss. Why are these buried memories bubbling up? Like Muhin said, memory is a chain. One small tug can unleash a flood, like a broken dam. Sometimes, the things you want to forget come rushing back the hardest. This feeling is too vivid to just wash away. Why did I have to wake up before it ended? I tossed and turned all night, and now I'm nearly late. Outside, Muhin greets me, asking if I slept well. One look at my face, and he clearly knows the answer. I wonder who's to blame. Muhin seems to have completely forgotten yesterday. I ask if he caught the spirit yet. Not yet, he says. I tell him to step it up. He calls me kind for supporting his Hyun. I think this isn't support, it's me wanting him to finish his job. He promises not to disappear for a whole week again. He hopes I'm not upset. Do I look upset? He says not at all, so why even ask? I tell him I'm fine, though my past self might have felt differently. That kiss felt like a rejection. He's walking me to class, even though does he know I'm planning to use myself as bait? It's a deliberate choice, even if it looks reckless. I hate risks, but Muhin is always there when things get dangerous. I trust him to keep me safe. Bait, I wish it didn't sound so terrifying, but I didn't expect him to shut me down like that. Damn it. Who is actually sleep-deprived here, me or him? Once I decide on something, nobody changes my mind. At the cafeteria, my friends want me to stick around for a few drags of a cigarette. We have time before the lecture. I tell them to smoke while I head ahead. Jin calls me disloyal. I tell him to drop it. We'll catch up in the lecture hall. Jin's a good guy, but he smokes way too much. Muhin can smell that scent a mile away. My next class is in the humanities building. Suddenly, a stranger blocks my path. Is it the spirit guy? Was he waiting for me? He says hello. I realize he isn't a spirit, though he looks just like one. I stay silent, so he repeats it. I snap, asking what he wants from me. You can't just walk up to strangers and say hi. He says it's polite to answer. I think it'd be better if this guy didn't act like he has no common sense, because he clearly has none.